Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What up, everybody? Welcome to this jam-packed episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. And don't forget to check out the resident branding company, Swag Cave. Get your swag. That link is in the podcast description. Hey, we got the trifecta on this episode. We're going to talk some Badger football. RJ Cardinal is going to be joining me in the third and final segment of this episode of the podcast, talking about the Badgers, looking back at that loss to Alabama and looking ahead, and talk a little Luke Fickell and what he's got to do and maybe his future with this team. So we got that. Then we've got some Brewers talk. Brewers on the verge of clinching the division, winning the division here. They're currently going up against the Philadelphia Phillies, so we'll talk about that in the second segment, halfway through this podcast. But I want to lead things off talking a little green and gold and a new segment that I'm going to be doing here. It's called Analyze That. So what that is, kind of mostly in the football season here, but usually I try to watch the game 2 or 3 times. One time as a fan, just straight up as a fan. Second, third time, try to watch it, see what I missed. You know, some of the stuff that I kind of missed out there. So did that yesterday, watching the Green Bay game, and there was a couple things I really wanted to focus on the defense side, because we spent so much time yesterday talking about the offense and talking about, you know, Malik Willis and the game plan from Matt LaFleur, the running attack from Jacobs and such. I wanted to kind of watch a little bit with the defense because, well, for one, a guy that we really haven't heard a ton about has been Kenny Clark, and I kind of wanted to see about, okay, what's really going on with Kenny Clark right now? Like, is he just kind of quiet? Are we missing anything? So got that, and then the other thing that kind of stood out to me as well. So that's coming up here in just a couple minutes. We're going to talk some Badgers with Mr. RJ Cardinal. Tyler Van Dyke done for the season with that knee injury. Also, we'll talk about Braylon Locke. And I want to ask you, Badger fans, all right? With Tyler Van Dyke done for the season, with that blowout loss to Alabama, got a bye week this week. What's your expectations now for the rest of this season, or what do you want to see from this Badger team for the rest of the season? Outside of, obviously, I think we would all, if you're a Badger fan, you want to see wins. We all want to see wins. Okay? But if you're being realistic with some of this stuff here, what is it now that you're like, what are your expectations, you know, for this ball club? So I want to talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about that with RJ coming up next hour. Don't forget, it is also an ASAP Used Auto Parts Grind My Gears Tuesday. Grind My Gears Tuesday. So what's grinding your gears? You want to get something off your chest, or maybe a pet peeve that's going on now that we've got football season and such? Let me know. All right. Hit us up with a text on that Shoe Doctors bullpen line at 715-830-1912. Or you can comment on the video stream. James over there talking about the Brewers. What excites me about the Brewers is their consistency. We all presumed there would be a collapse, but they proved us wrong. I think that consistency will bleed into the postseason. Go Brewers. You talk about consistency with the Brewers. I believe, I would have to double check, but I believe they are still the only team that hasn't lost 4 in a row in Major League Baseball. I still think they are. I'll have to double check that. But I believe they're still the only team yet in baseball that hasn't won or hasn't lost 4 in a row. So I'll try to double check that a little bit later on in between commercial breaks and such. So, all right, let's start this new segment called Analyze That. So, Mondays after a ball game, we tend to maybe overreact or get a little too pumped up, or we talk about, the main highlights or what really stood out and that. So now that we've gotten a little bit of we let it marinate a little bit here. We're a couple days removed. Kind of, do a little bit of a deep dive or take a look at a couple of things. Rewatch the tape, as a scout would say. Rewatch the film, and I do that a lot, just maybe to kind of watch some other things that maybe I'm not paying attention to if I'm watching as a fan, because if you're watching as a fan, you're kind of following the ball, right? That's where you're at. So yesterday when I turned the game back on, I really wanted to focus on the defense, because we've spent so much time talking about the offense and that. So there was one player in particular I wanted to really kind of hone in on and kind of watch was Kenny Clark. Because I feel like, Kenny Clark got that new deal, right? That extension before the season started. And Kenny Clark was a guy, too, that we all thought that would be a player that really benefited this system. And going back to that game, you heard Greg Olson, talking about Devontae Wyatt, saying Devontae Wyatt's a guy that's going to really benefit from that system. And you really didn't hear Kenny Clark's name mentioned too much. Wasn't, number 97 wasn't talked about a whole lot. And so I was like, okay, I want to watch this. I want to focus on 97 here a little bit. I want to focus on Kenny Clark. And just to kind of sum it up, to be honest, it's kind of been the same old Kenny Clark. There was quite a few times the man was double teamed. Rewatching it, there was quite a few times that guy was double teamed. Still, even with, base defense, 4 down linemen, he was double teamed. But the times that he wasn't, Kenny Clark was having his way on one-on-one matchups more times than not. Now, there were a few times he got really quick into the backfield, but Jonathan Taylor, the running back, kind of exploited that, ran right by him because that hole's opened up there. So, credit to the Colts and credit to Jonathan Taylor for exploiting that. But it was, when there was quite a few times, a lot of times, in fact, in that game, Kenny Clark was still double teams. But the times that he was matched up one-on-one, when he did have one-on-one matchups, Kenny Clark was bull rushing, pushing that offensive lineman into the backfield. And a couple times it actually worked against him when he was able to, really push that offensive lineman in the backfield with that bull rush that opened up a hole for Jonathan Taylor for a couple big runs there. So, honestly, it's kind of like the same Kenny Clark. Guys getting double teams, guys getting extra attention from offensive linemen, center, guard, right guard, left guard, depending on where Kenny Clark was lined up. So he's not making a whole lot of impact in terms of the box score, in terms of stats and such. But obviously he's still having an effect on the game where you've got opposing offensive linemen or opposing offensive lines focusing in on 97 and still double teaming him and still, recognizing that 97 is a dude. Is a dude out there. But one thing that I noticed a few times in that game too, when it was 3rd and long and when it was, an obvious passing situation, Packers employed a different defensive line. It was all their, for lack of a better phrase, defensive ends. Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness were lined up in the middle. Preston Smith and Kingsley Enagbare were lined up on the outside as defensive ends. But once the play started, it was stunts. So the ends, Preston Smith and Kiki, would crash inside, and then Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness would kind of come off the edge, come over the top there. And I noticed that a few times, rewatching the game yesterday, that again, it really wasn't talked about. But I'm like, did I actually see that? So you're like rewinding it, and sure enough, there was a couple times in obvious passing situations, in those 3rd downs. You had Kiki, Lucas Van Ness, Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith. The ends would crash down. Lucas Van Ness and Gary coming outside the edge, over the edge there. I thought that was kind of interesting. I'm like, okay. Getting your horses out there, right? And there was a couple times, too, Quay Walker would join in on the fun. Bring in their fast rushers going after that quarterback. There was a few times they'd line up with those four, but then Quay Walker would also blitz. Trying to get after the quarterback. We've heard Jeff Hafley talk about quite a bit getting after the quarterback, being aggressive, taking him down. And I think in the first couple of games, and when you really watch it, it seems to be a really kind of contained rush. There hasn't been a lot of sacks, right? I mean, there's been a couple. Devontae Wyatt had one. Against Richardson, Rashawn Gary had one. In Brazil against Jalen Hurts. There hasn't been a ton of sacks. And I know when you go on social media, which is a dangerous place, but when you go on social media, Packers fans have been like, well, where's the sacks? There's not a ton of sacks. You know, not everybody's like Aiden Hutchinson who's going to give you 100 in a game. You know, I'm being sarcastic in that, but you know what I mean. But I think it's been, when you kind of watch it, it seems to be a very kind of contained rush, which makes a lot of sense when you look at the two quarterbacks that the Packers have had to face in the first couple of weeks. It has been Jalen Hurts and it has been Anthony Richardson, quarterbacks that are mobile, quarterbacks that can beat you with their legs, can make big plays. They've had a very kind of like, shall we say, disciplined pass rush, trying to keep those quarterbacks in the pocket. And I think they've done a decent job. We talked about it the other day. We talked about it after the Hurts game, after the Philly game. Hurts didn't really beat them with their legs, or with his legs. Same with Anthony Richardson. Outside of that last play, or one of the last plays where he picked up that 4th and long with his legs. And when you rewatch it, that was an interesting one because I rewatched it. You had Kenny Clark and I think it was Colby Wooden who actually dropped back. So they started to rush, but then they dropped back. But then Kenny Clark tripped. And if you rewatch that replay, it was Quay Walker and Kenny Clark. Kenny Clark was actually the one who pushed Richardson out. So it kind of got blown up in that aspect where, you know, you had your two interior linemen who kind of backed off and dropped back. Richardson steps up in the middle and beats him to the edge. But it's been a very kind of disciplined pass rush contained within the pocket, and it makes sense. Now, it'll be interesting to see if it changes this weekend going up against Will Levis, because according to Next Gen Stats, the most pressured quarterback in the NFL on percentage of dropbacks the first 2 weeks of the season is Will Levis, 53.4%. The next closest is Caleb Williams at 43.2%. But the most pressured quarterback in the NFL, based off percentage of dropbacks, Will Levis, over half of his dropbacks he's been pressured on. So the first 2 weeks, when you've looked at this Packers pass rush, it's kind of been a contained, disciplined pass rush, trying to keep the quarterback in the pocket, not allowing him to, you know, extend the play, beat you with their legs, going out there and making big plays on the run. That perhaps changes this week. So for any Packers fan out there that would like to see more sacks, kind of questioning why maybe they don't have more sacks, or getting after the quarterback, possibly could be this week with Will Levis. But when you break it all down, it kind of makes sense when you look at the numbers like, oh, okay, you got two mobile quarterbacks there. And maybe that's when we'll see a guy like Kenny Clark really now start to take advantage of this style of defense. But I thought it was interesting rewatching it, seeing some of those defensive formations up front, especially on the third and long, obvious passing situations, to employ your 4 defensive ends all on the line. It almost kind of reminded me of Don Capers' NASCAR package back in the day. Getting all your pass rushers up there and going like it was like one down lineman and then a bunch of outside linebackers. But you had Gary and Van Ness lined up in the middle and then stunting out. So something to kind of keep an eye on, maybe, especially now with the Packers getting set to go up against Will Levis. So, quick note too: Rob Demoski, our good buddy Rob Demoski, noted yesterday that from what he had heard, the whole Jordan Love last week being very coy, then being listed as questionable and such. Apparently, from what Rob had heard, it wasn't a charade. That Jordan Love was very close to playing in the game on Sunday. So if you're one that is hoping that Jordan Love can play against the Titans, maybe there's a decent shot. Matt LaFleur yesterday said that he'd like to have his quarterback practice a little bit since he didn't practice at all last week, but it is not a prerequisite for him to go out there. So we'll get our first glimpse tomorrow when the Packers return to practice. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and I want to talk some Brewers coming up after these quick words. Let's talk some Brewers baseball to open up this morning, shall we? Brew Crew picking up a 6-2 win last night against the top team in the National League. Top team wins wise in all of Major League Baseball, the Philadelphia Phillies. Brewers jumping out to an early lead and really never looking back after that. Putting up 2 runs in the bottom of the third. William Contreras with that 2-run double. Brewers tacking on another one in the fourth there, and then a couple more insurance runs in the 6th, and ended up with 6 total runs on 8 hits. Aaron Savali, solid, 5 innings. Maybe Brewers would have liked to go another inning or such with him. But he went 5, giving up 7 hits, striking out 6. Did give up a dinger solo shot there, 1 earned run. But Colin Ray, who has been one of the more consistent starters for this Brewers team this season, coming out of the pen, all hands on deck approach right now in this stretch run for the Brewers. He comes in, pitches just under 3 innings, 2 2/3. Giving up 3 hits, 1 strike, no earned runs, picking up the save, his first career save. But with the Brewers kind of stretched thin in the bullpen and the pitching department, given this stretch of games with no off days built in, guys a little bit banged up, dinged up here a little bit. Colin Ray stepping up and providing his team with a couple innings of relief last night. All hands on deck, a perfect example, I think, last night of just this whole team. It was a team win. It was a team victory last night for the crew. And going through some of the comments from some of the players and Pat Murphy and such, they kind of echoed that. Colin Ray, after the game, we always figure out a way. We sign the right type of guys that are willing to do anything. This was actually, from Pat Murphy. Colin was told today that we're light in the bullpen. That's the type of people who you're looking to build with when you're in a small market and have all the adversity that we've had. That's what this comes down to. Also, Pat Murphy talking about the team getting close to clinching that playoff spot. And he said, I heard what people were saying. A lot of people laughed at us and said that this was a rebuild and things like that. We haven't accomplished anything yet, but we'll keep playing and be competitive every game like we have. That's what I see in this group. It's the right young energy, the right leaders. Savali, after the game, kind of talking about the environment and this playoff run, or this run to the playoffs. Excuse me. So he said, anytime you're competing and playing meaningful games at the end of the year, it's awesome. The crowd is definitely into it every time. It's nice to pitch in front of them. It's also the confidence and comfort I have with this whole team and that everyone in this clubhouse has with each other. Here's how well Savali has been pitching, and I think it's kind of flew under the flew under the radar just a bit, because earlier this morning when I was looking up some numbers and some stats and that, and I saw this, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I think that kind of flew under the radar a little bit. I probably wouldn't have guessed that. Civale in his last 7 starts, he's 5-0 with a 2.56 ERA. We talk about him and Frankie Montas and DL Hall, maybe pitching this last few games here, trying to make an impression to, be a part of maybe a playoff rotation there, that 4 spot or wherever it be, maybe a piggyback or whatnot. And Civale's right now, you got to give the man credit. His last 7 games, dude's been those are pretty solid numbers. And you go back to August, and again, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. So you take away that August 3rd game where he had 5 earned runs. Otherwise, that would have been, 8th game there. He had 5 earned runs. The most he has given up has been 3. And he did that against Oakland on the 23rd and St. Louis back on September 3rd. Other than that, it's 2, 0, 3, 0, 3, 2, 1. But when you break it down, I think, if you're 4th starter, 5th starter, whatever, however you view Aaron Civale in terms of where he's lined up in his rotation, I will take a 5-0 record with a 2.56 ERA for my 4th, 5th starter any day of the week right now. We talk about building momentum, stacking success, playing your best baseball as we near the postseason, as we get into the postseason. And right now, you can make that case that Aaron Civale is doing just that. That he's doing just that. And, you got Colin Ray who, comes out of the bullpen and such. This is one thing that's really going to be curious to see once the Brewers get to the postseason. We all know they're going. Okay, unless there's something catastrophic that happens. Don't want to jinx or anything, but they're going. Okay. It is going to be very interesting to see who makes that playoff roster, who makes that rotation, and how creative does Pat Murphy and Chris Hook get here too? Because remember, Pat Murphy, one of the things he has done this year with his staff is he's empowered his staff. From all the accounts, from what we've heard, read, listened to, whatever, sounds like he's given a lot more responsibility to his staff, to his assistant coaches, 2 guys like Chris Hook. And I think one of the most intriguing things that I kind of curious to see how it's going to work or how they're going to go about it is the pitchers they keep, and could some of these guys that we've seen, get some starts, could they be bullpen options, but kind of long relief bullpen options here? So that to me is going to be something fascinating to kind of watch here. Because, if you have that versatility of a guy like Colin Ray that can come out of the pen and eat you some innings, maybe, an Aaron Civale or maybe a Frankie Montas, DL Hall could do that. It's just, I'm really curious and intrigued to see how this all plays out when we get to that postseason. Especially, it's a short series too, right? How do the Brewers treat that series? I think it's fair to say they haven't really had a lights out dominant starter number 1 ace. So is it kind of an all hands on deck approach when you get to the postseason here? Maybe you throw out a starter, but hey, if he doesn't have the stuff right away, you pull him, and then you got another guy that can eat you a few. I don't know, but that's going to be, I think, one of the most intriguing things is how they're going to pick their roster and what pitchers they're going to decide to bring. Some are locks, but I think there's going to be a few. Maybe it's like an Aaron Civale. Maybe it's like a Frankie Montas. What exact roles are they going to have when it gets to be postseason time? So the Brewers tonight's going to be an interesting pitching matchup between these two ball clubs. The offense is going to have their work cut out for them. They're going up against Zach Wheeler. Zach Wheeler getting the start for the Phillies this year, 15-6 with a 2.60 ERA. You've got some experience, plenty of experience with a couple guys going up against Zach Wheeler. In fact, one guy who has had success against Zach Wheeler in his career has been Willy Adames. In 13 career at-bats, he has a home run, but he's hitting .308 with an OPS of an .846 against Zach Wheeler. Other than that, I mean, you've had Hoskins, who's gotten 22 career at-bats, .227. Hoskins just kind of seems maybe to take it up a notch here when he goes up against his former team here. Sanchez has 11 career at-bats, but nothing to brag about, 182 OPS. Contreras, 12 career at-bats, 167, 417 OPS. On the flip side, when you look at some of these Phillies hitters going up against Frankie, Marsh has 11 career at-bats, 182. Nick Castellanos is 231 and 13 career at-bats. So, I mean, Willie, by all accounts, when we look at players who have double-digit at-bats, a little bit more experience against these pitchers, Willie has had the most success against them. But when you look at what Zach Wheeler has kind of been doing since August, guy's been pretty dominant. When you look at his last 8 games, he's 5-1 right now in his last 8 games. In the month of August, he finished with a 1.62 ERA in 6 games. 1.62 ERA in 6 games. September right now, he's 2-0 with a 2.25 ERA. He's coming off of a win against Tampa Bay back on the 11th, where he went 6 innings and 2 earned runs. Zach Wheeler is a guy that's going to eat up some innings here too. And he's been pretty darn consistent since August. Since August, he has pitched at least, in these 8 games, in these last 8 games, he has pitched at least 6 innings or more. And his pitch counts have been fairly, he's only gone 100 or more twice in those 8 games. In fact, the one game against Seattle at the beginning of August, he went 8 innings and only pitched 96 pitches. So, he's been pretty efficient here too. So if the Brewers, I got to imagine maybe, Brewers-wise, you want to probably maybe try to attack him or get that pitch count up early. Try to get him out of the game. Try to be a little aggressive if you can. The last really bad start from Zach Wheeler, you got to go back to the 29th, and it was against the Yankees, where he went 5 innings, and he gave up 7 earned runs and 3 home runs. And then you go back to June, where he gave up 8 earned runs against Baltimore in a game. So maybe Zach Wheeler's due. He didn't really have that bad game in August. Had that, kind of hiccup in July against the Phillies, June against Baltimore. Kind of had another one in May if we're scrolling through it, where he gave up 6 in May. I think he's due. That's optimistic thinking right there. Hopefully he's due against the Brewers tonight with this Brewers offense. But nonetheless, it's going to be a tough outing because he is pitching really well. Frankie Montas, meanwhile, he's coming off of a solid August. 2-1 with a 3.82 ERA. In his 2 starts in September, he's 1-1 with a 2.25 ERA. His lone loss came September 6th against Colorado, where he went 6, 3 earned runs. But he's coming off of that game against the Giants back on the 12th, where he picked up the win, went 6 innings, and just gave up 2 hits, no earned runs, and a couple of walks too. 8 strikeouts. The last 2 games that Frankie Montas has pitched, the 2 games in September, dude has been racking up some of the strikeouts. 18 total strikeouts in his last 2 games. 10 against Colorado in the 6th, and his last game against the Giants, he had 8. So he's been racking them up here in the last couple of weeks here. That's why I think tonight's matchup between these two pitchers, it's good. It potentially could be pretty fun. Brewers' sake, I hope that they can get to Wheeler early and Wheeler's having an off day. But when you look at how these two pitchers have been pitching as of late, it could be a fun outing. Maybe a little anxious outing. I mean, everything on paper and everything that we see lately, it kind of paints a picture of a potentially, maybe low-scoring game, right? But how many times in baseball and how many times in sports has it gone a complete 180, the complete opposite? More times than we could probably imagine. But the Brewers have a chance tonight. They have a chance tonight to win the division. They need to take care of their business first. And, they need the Oakland A's to help them out a little bit too. So, I know that's, you're not really controlling your own destiny there, but I got to imagine the message is, and I hope that the message is with this team. And I thought Pat Murphy made a kind of an interesting comment, funny comment yesterday too before the game. It's like, I'm not sure how many guys actually know what's going on. And I like that mindset. If that's true, where some of the guys, they're kind of tuning it out, zoning it out. They don't know what's going on, or they don't know where they're at in the standings and that. I mean, don't know if that's true or that's just typical coach speak. But I like that mindset if that's the case. But I hope that the Brewers just kind of continue to roll with that mindset that they've been having pretty much all season, one game at a time. We're focused on winning today. Take care of your business. It'll all work out. Win tonight, then you can check the scoreboard. I'd rather have Brewers team kind of take care of their own business and just win it outright that way. But still, main thing too, besides the wins, start to gain that momentum, continue to gain that momentum. Because right now you're looking at those 3 games against Arizona, you won 2 out of 3. Maybe if you didn't have a tired bullpen, a little bit worn out bullpen, you might have completed that sweep against Arizona, but who knows? A lot of butterfly effects there. You picked up this first win against Philadelphia. We knew this was going to be a tough stretch, but this was a stretch we wanted to see this team stack success, win a bunch of games, get momentum heading into the postseason. Right now, they're trending in that direction. And I got to tell you, I'm getting pretty pumped up. Because we're officially less than 2 weeks of the regular season being done with. We're close. We're feeling it. And they're still in that chase. The Brewers are still in that chase to try to get one of those top 2 seeds in the National League. And they could really help themselves out. It's a tough task, but they could really help themselves out if they could somehow pull off a sweep against Philadelphia if it comes into tiebreakers and such. But man, I love this. It's kind of like playoff baseball right now, really. All right, quick break, and we're going to talk some Badgers with Mr. RJ Cardinal coming up next. Let's talk some Badgers.
Hey, everyone. It is Ryan Seacrest here. Ready to heat up your summer vacation? Get ready. Things are about to get sizzling at Chumba Casino. Your summer getting a whole lot hotter with a special daily login bonus waiting just for you. So sign up now for Reels of Fun and Reels of Prizes right here at Chumba Casino with yours truly. Join me at ChumbaCasino.com and dive into a summer of social casino fun.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
I know we have to maybe mention that game on Saturday. RJ Cardinal is joining us here this morning. So, RJ, I don't know how else to bring up Saturday, but, I mean, it was, as Luke Fickell said, got your butts whooped over there. I mean, obviously the Van Dyke injury now, I got to imagine that changed quite a bit in the offensive game plan.
Well, according to the offensive coordinator, it shouldn't have because they were 1A and 1B. And the game I watched definitely told me it was the number 1 quarterback went down and your number 3 quarterback ended up playing even though he was number 2. guy completed 50% of his passes on Saturday. He completed 50% of his passes last year. That's not going to win you many ball games.
Right.
Started out, whether he was nervous or whatnot, thrown at people's feet. Had some good-looking passes a little later in the game that were just out of the reach of receivers. Well, that's that. You gave Alabama a short field twice with some fumbles, a short field with a last few years, not necessarily being a 3-4. I mean, they definitely weren't 3-3-5. They still had maybe, two down linemen, move a guy to linebacker, and have a kind of or a hybrid safety in there, but like a guy who's gonna be good enough to be able to rush a passer. Don't have that. So yeah, it's like we were talking about. The running game of Alabama was able to gash the Badgers, and then when you look at the passing game, they had a good mix of being able to kind of guess when the Badgers were going to be trying to rush the passer and either get to the outside and Jalen Milroe could get to the edge faster than anybody else, or he was able to dump it off for some good chunk yardage.
So, RJ, let me ask you, what has been most disappointing or maybe most frustrating for you these first 3 games of the season? Has it been the offense or has it been the defensive play so far?
It's been the fact there has been no progress from last year anywhere, maybe even a regression. And that is, and everybody says, well, wait till he gets his guys in. Well, over 50% of the roster now is transfers and their recruiting class. So if their guys are here, why aren't they playing them? And why, if we are playing them, why don't they seem better developed over last year? That leads me to believe you do not have a good coaching staff. So, yeah, I mean, you can say the cupboards were bare when they got here. They really weren't to where Wisconsin had them in the past few seasons prior to 2022. But you're still playing those guys, and you've brought other people in. So what's that tell you about the people you're bringing in?
Mm-hmm.
Either your coaching staff that got Cincinnati up to where it was and got Sauce Gardner to the pros, where's the development? And if it's not there, coaches have to go. It's not really on the players at that point because you brought them in. If you saw something in them, there should be something to tell you that they should be better than they are.
So, one of the questions I think a lot of us had, and I know I asked Colton Bartholomew this last week, but, the first 2 weeks, the question has been, okay, are they opening up the playbook? Are they holding anything? We'll find out against Alabama and such. Did that get answered in that Alabama game that maybe they weren't really holding on to anything? If they were, those plays weren't working the greatest either at that point.
Even on that first field goal drive, I can't say I saw anything that looked different, It was just execution, I guess. And, I mean, the first drive looked all right. Sure, you would have liked to have seen them get a little closer and get that touchdown. But, from the first drive, then stopping Alabama on their first drive, it looked like it was going to be a competitive game. And who knows, maybe people got down on themselves after Tyler Van Dyke went out and, had to do some adjusting there. But, you still won in time of possession, so you held onto the ball for a long time. It was just you were going up against a better team. And I think most people thought that. I mean, what I say on last Tuesday, I thought it was going to be 42-17, I think I said. Yeah. And, I mean, I was pretty darn close. I just got a little too optimistic for Wisconsin, I guess. So it's not so mad about an overreaction to a single game. It's the fact that we haven't seen any improvement, and the fact now you have two different factions of what have we been sold here? It's like we were given snake oil, and the people who are like, well, he needs time to get his guys in here. Well, in the transfer portal era, you should be able to get your guys in here a lot quicker. And I mean, there's like 10 or 11 spots across the two deep that are transfer portal and his guys. So if more of his guys can't break the two deep, I mean, at that point, what's going on here? Or why aren't you playing the younger guys if they're supposed to be the better ones? It's really a quandary of what is going on internally here that isn't clicking.
So Braden Locke going to be the guy. He's got an off week to kind of help prepare. What should we know, or what should we expect from what you know? What type of quarterback is Braden Locke, or what are the expectations of him? You know, kind of coming in here as a recruit initially.
I mean, he had a great mind. He played under 1 year under Mike Leach at Mississippi State in a true air raid, so he was familiar and knew of Longo. And like I said, when they came for a visit, they sat down and watched film and just crushed it for like 2 hours when it was supposed to be a half-hour meeting. So he's smart. He knows football. At this point, we just need to see the execution. And, hitting 50% of your passes is not it. So it's there. I mean, everything from high school and things like that, he's got the football intelligence to be a good quarterback. We just now need to see it after his games last year, coming up in mop-up duty versus Iowa because Mordecai went down, and then the next couple of games there, and now this one. And, yeah, sure, getting thrown in to a game can be pretty difficult, but it's one of those you need to see the vast improvement from being only getting 50% of your passes completed. And if that doesn't happen, you're not going to be winning a lot of football games.
RJ Cardinal, our Badger analyst, joining us here this morning. Would you expect, I mean, that may be wishful thinking here, but would you expect with the new quarterback, sometimes we see it, I mean, we saw it with Green Bay, right? Different game plans and that sort of stuff. Would you expect, or maybe hope is probably the best word, something different, in terms of their identity on offense, I guess?
I'm not too sure, because it seems like there's an identity struggle between the offensive coordinator and the head coach right now, After the game, Fickle even said, I wish we would have ran the ball more. I mean, you ran it 41 times.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the only other way you could have done it is just scrap the passing game altogether and made yourself one-dimensional, which I really feel Alabama tried to do, because they, just like our first two games, they weren't playing too deep. They knew the ball wasn't coming. And a couple of times when the ball did go over the top, they were nice passes that beat them, and it almost seemed like the receivers were more taken aback by the ball went past 10 yards, overall, I mean, you just got to see something. If something's working, there's no point in going away from it. We've talked about it before. Paul Christ used to run the same play 4, 5, 6 times in a row out of different formations, and it worked every time because he knew the opponent couldn't stop it. If something's working, really, I don't think anything was working Saturday. So, yeah, I can understand going to and from passing and running and all that kind of stuff. But consistency, not changing things up for the sake of, whoa, they might stop it. Well, if they stop it, then you change things up. Until they stop it, you don't have to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just need to see consistency, because right now there's none. And that was pretty evident in the first two games. The talent gap in this one, I think, caused it to be non-existent. And yeah, it's just not good football to watch.
So with that, we've got 3 weeks in. We know what happened the first 2 weeks. Obviously, we know what happened this past Saturday. Got the bye week here. You got USC. Got to go to USC there. What should be the outlook? What should be the expectation now for Badger fans the rest of the season? Outside, we all want wins in that. But what should be our expectations, or what should we be looking for, I guess, in for the rest of the season at this point?
Well, I'm not sure how we're going to stop Nebraska's offense, because that's looking pretty good right now, and we don't have a defense to speak of. I mean, chalk up losses to USC, Penn State, Oregon, and Nebraska right now, so there's 4 more losses on your schedule. Purdue just got waxed, so who knows what's going on with them. I still don't buy into Rutgers. Sure, they have a good rushing game, and they've played some not great teams that have helped out their defense. But yeah, watching their quarterback play, it's not good. But I mean, they could probably run. I think they have the top rushing attack in the country right now. They could probably beat Wisconsin. Northwestern is Northwestern. I mean, you're not playing at Ryan Field, but somehow we always have trouble with Northwestern. And I mean, so far, they're only Power 5 program. They lost by 6 points too. We'll see what happens when they play, I think, Washington this week, who just got beat by a group of 5 technically school pretty soon. Iowa, I mean, they change in the middle of a game now, and who really knows with the Gophers either. So, I mean, it became something where you could see 6 to 7 wins to now even, and it's not solely based on this one Alabama game. I mean, I didn't think we had a chance of winning it at all. Mm-hmm. And it's just the fact, and so many people now, well, he's only had 16 games. Okay, what have you seen improve in 16 games? And then come the excuses of, well, they're not his players. Well, he's had 2 recruiting cycles now, and two times of bringing in transfer students. Like, when are his guys going to get here? Mm-hmm. And until you got to give him a full roster, so we got to go until 2026. He's going to have a full roster of guys that are just his, and that's going to make the difference. Like, I don't get it, and I'm not saying he needs to be fired. I'm not saying anything like that. I think the coaches are lacking in the development ability. Maybe look into getting new coaches. I don't know how good of friends he and Tressel are, but I don't think he's a good defensive coordinator. Like, his in-game strategy is not good. And I mean, that's pretty evident when you're in games against Western Michigan and South Dakota for 4 quarters. And yeah, it's a bleak outlook the rest of the year right now. And whether you're in the camp of, oh, it'll be okay, we just got to wait a couple of years, like Nebraska had for the last 20 years, congratulations. We're in year 2 of that then, and we're not going to be back until 2030 something. That's where we are, or if you're in the camp of something needs to change drastically right now or else we're going to be doomed, at least you got a little self-awareness. But if you think giving it more years is going to be okay, chances are you're going to be the one complaining when we're letting go of a coach and trying to find a new one and say, this is going to be the guy this time. Yeah.
Have you, have you had this feeling before when it's come to this Badger football team? This kind of bleak outlook or how you kind of feel like now. Have you ever had that feeling before when it's come to this team?
No, I have not. Like, This is the first time I can remember thinking we're headed down a spiral here, and we're going to have people pointing at us saying, you're just remembering the good times, like Nebraska has for the last few years. And we didn't have the good times Nebraska did. We don't have the national championships. We have some New Year's Day 6 bowl wins and all that kind of stuff. And there's people who seem to forget Paul Chryst took us to that. Brett Bielema took us to that. You had a little dip in there with a guy who wanted to change the identity of Wisconsin and was basically told to leave. Right now you have a guy who even admitted, I came in here and had an outside perception of Wisconsin, but I didn't really know. And it seems like he still doesn't know right now. But we'll see if somebody can talk to him, maybe the AD who, played here, and didn't want to hire somebody who knew the culture and wanted to make a big splash. Well, right now, your best hire so far as an AD is the men's hockey coach. And, if that's your claim to fame, your university chancellor is probably going to be letting you go when people don't renew their tickets moving forward, because I don't think we have the boosters that Nebraska does to buy all the tickets that nobody else buys and can continue a sellout streak that is a farce.
RJ bringing it this morning, man. I love it. I love the passion, buddy. All right. Well, what are you going to do on the bye week? Regroup? You going to USC next week?
Yeah, I am.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'll be leaving Wednesday, heading down to Chicago to meet up some buddies, and then heading out, spending the day down there, then heading out to LA Friday. Depending on how games work, we're going to try to go to the Badger game and then get to Pasadena for the Oregon UCLA game.
Ooh.
Then Sunday we have tickets for Chargers Chiefs. So it'll be a nice football weekend.
That's a hell of a football weekend, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So two games guaranteed, maybe 3. We'll see.
That's awesome. Living it up, man. I love it. All right, dude. Hey, we appreciate the time as always. Enjoy the rest of your week, buddy. And before you fly out, we'll talk with you next week, okay?
Sounds good. We'll talk to you then.
And that is going to do it for us on this episode of the Man Cave Podcast. Again, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. And don't forget to check out Swag Cave, the Residence Branding Company Swag Cave. That link is in the podcast description. Big thanks for tuning in, and hopefully we can get you back to the Man Cave. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're all over, including YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. Until next time, I'm Dan Casper, and I will talk to you on the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast.